Sami Muwadi, what is the state of Spanish and Italian banks right now?
Yeah. What we're seeing now is a lot of funding vulnerabilities on the bank balance sheets. There's been a pullback in both short-term and long-term debt market access for these banks. And unfortunately for them, they're being forced to turn to the ECB for funding. So certainly, we have a fairly cautious viewpoint on that front right now.
Are French banks in much better shape?
I would argue they are. Perhaps I'm in the minority, but I think with respect to BNP and SocGen, for example, they've written off or at least created the provision charge for those Greek sovereign holdings. And I think the capital bases in general are in a much better position than you find in the Italian banks and the Spanish banks.
German banks and Germany itself is expected to carry the load.
Yeah.
Can they? Are they structurally sound?
On the German banks, we are a bit negative as well. Perhaps that's not a consensus view, but you look at a banking system that has a lot of state ownership in it. They're not the most efficiently run banks. The return on assets are typically lower than you find. And then also, lastly, their exposure to, for example, the Italian sovereign and then cross-border lending to the banks is quite high. So there's a lot of challenges for the German banks too.
Finally, there's clearly a lot of carnage going on in Europe right now. Are there any banks to buy? Any values out there?
There are. So you look at, from my angle, I'm covering the debt of these banks, and you have credit spreads, near historical wides. So the UK banks, Lloyds and RBS, we think we find some value there. And then also the Swiss banks. You're looking at banks with the highest capital adequacy ratios in the world, and we think those make a good investment today.